I'm Allie, I'm the pastry chef at Buzz Bake Shop, and we are going to do part 2, which will be decorating the cake. And this is what you will be judged on. The criteria that I'll be looking for is making sure that the final coat is as smooth as possible, that the swirls on the top edge of the decoration is even and consistent, that your chocolate drip is drippy and not globby. Yeah, I think that's basically it. As close as you can get it to looking like mine, the better. But really what this boils down to is just make sure you have fun with this. If you're doing this with other people, just have fun, hang out, enjoy each other's company, and just try to be as creative as you can and just knock it out. All right, so to start, we're gonna use our leftover buttercream from setting in the cake, and you should have more than enough buttercream for this whole project. And again, you just wanna make sure that you're knocking out the bubbles to start. And I'm gonna portion maybe like, I don't know, probably 3 cups worth of buttercream, so that you're left with about 2 cups left in your bowl. And the buttercream that is left in here will be enough for the swirls on the top edge of your cake, which will come later. But for now, we do want to color this. I'll be providing yellow food gel. If you have a different color at home, feel free to use a different color. But for starters, we're going to do yellow. You can do as much or as little as you'd like. I kind of want this to pop. It's getting nice outside. I want it to be bright and cheerful and fun and exciting. So we're going to make this a bright and cheery cake. So, all right. So start with a little bit of food coloring in the beginning, and you can always add more. It's harder to take food coloring away. Actually, it's almost impossible unless if you're adding more vanilla buttercream to it to mute that color. So I would start with a little bit, mix it through, and if, oh, I got a little crumb here. And if you want it to be brighter or darker, or maybe you want to add a touch of blue to this and have more of a turquoise color, just start little and build up to it. I am going to add a couple more drops of yellow. And you just want to mix your buttercream through until you don't see any color streaking. Sometimes that could be the look that you're going for, but right now it is not. So we just want to make sure that this is completely cohesive and it looks good. All right. So using your rubber spatula, you just want to make sure that you scrape your buttercream into a solid mass in whatever bowl that you're using. It'll make gathering the buttercream on the tip of your offset much easier, so you don't have to like keep scraping down the bowl for it. It just becomes a little bit more of an efficient process. All right, so we have our buttercream. We want to grab our offset again, and again, using the bottom tip of your offset, you're going to build it up with buttercream. And just like we did with the crumb coat, you're going to start with the bottom half, press the icing down onto the cake, and then just wiggle back and forth. And you do want to overlap whenever you're starting and stopping so that it's a consistent size the whole way around. And then to finish, I do just run my offset around the entire base. And if you notice, we have nice straight sides to begin with. They're not perfect, they're not smooth, but for right now, this is great. It's pretty straight, and that's what we want to make sure that we're achieving the whole way through. You also want to make sure that you're building up enough icing on the outside so that when you go to smooth your icing and create nice straight sides, that you can afford to take off a little bit more if you do have some air bubbles or some spacing in your icing. And I can show you the difference between maybe just a little uneven texture or an actual hole in your icing where you'll need to go back and patch that up. But for now, let's just finish icing the sides. And we'll do the same thing that we did on the bottom, but we're just going to mirror that same process to the top half. All right. So now we have the top part finished. All right. The final part is to put icing on the top. And again, it's basically the exact same process as the crumb coat, but you're just building up more icing on the outside and the top. So I'm going to put a nice dollop on the top of the cake. And I'm going to push it over the edge. And what that does is it seals the edge with the icing on the side so that you have consistent spacing. And then when you go to complete the edge of your cake, you won't have any gaps or holes. And it'll look just like a smooth 90-degree angle. I'm just going to run my offset around the edge just to push that buttercream up over the top. All right, and then now we're ready for our straight edge. This part can be a little more technical, a little more involved, but I'm going to talk you through the steps and hopefully it'll be, I don't know, somewhat of an easy process for you. So you want to make sure that your straight edge is straight against the cake. Don't match it with the icing because your icing might not be straight. So you want to look at the angle here, and if it looks straight to you, go with it. Just don't compare it to the icing because your icing will not be straight. My icing is not straight right now. So you'll want to hold your straight edge still while you turn your cake table. Notice how my right hand, it's not moving at all. My left hand is doing all of the work, and I'm just continuing to turn until I don't see any more spacing or holes or air pockets on the outside of my cake. And once when I feel like I'm at a good place with it, your finish, you want to pull it off of the cake so that you don't have an obvious, I call it a tail. It's just kind of this like wispy finish on the back of your cake, and that's what you're going for. Sometimes if you stop the table and then pull your straight edge off, you'll see pull marks on the back side of your cake. If you do that, that's okay. Just start the process over, give your turntable a couple more revolutions, and then you'll be able to smooth that back end off a little bit more. If you do have any holes or pockets in your buttercream that just don't really seem like they're going away, that's also okay, and you will more than likely have that happen. Just take a little bit of buttercream on the tip of your small palette knife, or again, if you don't have one, you can use your large one, and just fill in that hole wherever it might be, and then go back and then smooth your side again. So the next part that we want to do is clean off this top edge so we can get a nice smooth top and a clean surface to work with. If you have a lot of buttercream left on your straight edge, you will see that as you're pulling the icing through. So just make sure that when you're starting with a clean edge. I'm gonna just turn this so I can scrape it well. All right, so the next thing that I look for is a good starting place. And how I identify that is by finding kind of a valley in your icing. And it's actually pretty consistent, but if I'm looking here, see if I can tilt this up a little bit. Ooh, I hope it doesn't slide. Right here seems to be much higher than over here. So I'm gonna start on this side and pull it through. And that should give me a pretty decent starting angle. All right, so I'm going to identify where I think the top of the cake is, and you can do that by noticing the surface of your cake and just draw an imaginary line over and through this top lip, and that's where you're going to want to start with your straight edge. All right, so your first pull can be a little bit scary. I didn't pull the whole way through just because I wanted to get a good starting edge here. So I did achieve that. And the next thing that you want to do is turn that space where you have more of a smooth edge and then your lip. You want that section to be more at like 9 o'clock. If this was the face of a clock, you want it to be facing at 9 o'clock. And then you're going to line this little peak up with the center of your straight edge. and you're gonna pull it straight through. And again, you wanna make sure that you're applying consistent pressure as you're pulling your cake cone through. And again, we have the same situation happening here. So I'm gonna turn it to 9 o'clock, line it up with the center of my cake cone, and pull it straight through. And this is what the surface is beginning to look like. All right. And once when you feel like you have the hang of it, just kind of cruise through it, finish your edge. And you can do this as many times as you need. Just don't apply too much pressure, because then you'll start taking off your buttercream on the top surface and you'll start getting down to the crumb coat. But I feel pretty good about this, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop. And at this phase, we do wanna clean our board again, just like we did with the crumb coat. But this is going to be the final clean, so that our board now becomes our display board. And then again, just make sure that you clean up any buttercream that's on the base. And all right, yeah, that looks good. All right, so we have our base coated cake right here. And the fun part are the sprinkles. So right here we have a really fun sprinkle mix. It's rainbow sprinkles, neon confetti sprinkles, rainbow nonpareils. So you can kind of mix and match and create your own if you ever wanted to. These sprinkles will be provided in the kit, but just have fun with it. They're sprinkles, they're meant to be happy. So don't let it stress you out. All right, so all the parents that are doing this with their children, I apologize ahead of time, because you will have a sprinkle bomb in your kitchen. But you're going to take a pinch of sprinkles in your fingertips and throw them around the base of the cake. And I can hear them just like bouncing off of my kitchen floor. Oh, this will be so much fun to clean. All right. Yep, they're all just bouncing right off. All right. So the reason why we want to do the sprinkles before we do the chocolate drip is because at some point our buttercream is going to set on us, and it's going to set one of two ways, or even both ways. You're either going to get what we call a crust on it, where the buttercream will still be soft, but all of the moisture and the sugar sets and nothing will adhere to it. So if you try to throw on sprinkles, it doesn't matter how hard you throw it, they will not stick. Or if your cake is super, super cold, it's naturally going to set up and tighten the butter that's in your buttercream, and then also nothing's going to stick to the buttercream. So you'll want to do this immediately after you do the final coat of your buttercream, and then we'll move to the chocolate glaze. All right, so we're working with just glazing chocolate. It's the same wafers that you can get at Michael's, even in the grocery store, what you would dip your strawberries in. It's super simple to work with. You just melt it in the microwave in increments of 20 seconds until it's melted. You want to make sure that it's not hot, because as you can figure out, we're working with butter. So if you have anything that's too hot, you're just going to melt your cake. So you really want to make sure that it's right around body temperature. So the best way to test is if you wanted to stick your fingertip in the chocolate and just feel it against your wrist. It should feel cooler than your wrist. It's also a very similar way to checking a bottle that you would give to a baby. So if you're familiar with that step, it's very similar. All right, so you will want a piping bag. Do not trim the tip. This is very important. You'll thank me later. Don't trim the tip. All right, so roll the bag down, and you want to stick this portion into a cup, and then roll the bag over the cup as much as possible, and then whatever doesn't roll down the cup, just push back into it. And we're gonna pour the chocolate into the bag. All right. you will see why you do not want to trim the tip of your bag. So now it is safe inside, and we can tie off the top of this bag. So if you don't have enough length up here, that's okay. You can also use a chip clip to keep it together, and that way the chocolate won't leak out of the top. I'm trying to think, a barrette. There's a rubber band. You can use a lot of things to keep the top of the bag sealed if you don't have a lot of space here. So twist the end so that you can knot it off. All right, so now we have our bag and we have control over our bag. So now we can trim the tip of it off, and we don't want to trim too much. You can see it's probably the size of, like, I don't know, a pencil maybe. It's not very big. The bigger the hole, the faster you have to work and more of a mess you're going to create. So go for a small hole. Find the back of your cake, and the way you can find the back of your cake is looking for where you finished smoothing off your sides, where that tail is. So make sure that the back of the cake is now facing you, and that's usually a great way or great place to start. So as you can tell, the chocolate is quickly pouring out of the bag. I'm not squeezing the bag at all. It's just laying in my hand. And I'm just carefully running it around the side. And ever so often, I'm kind of pulling my bag forward so that it drips down. All right. I'm just going to run a little bit around the top, and then you can go back, and then you can just fill in those little spaces. If you don't have a clean edge at the top, it's really not the end of the world, because we're going to cover that up. So the top edge does not have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be finished. As you can tell, I have some spaces here, and that's okay. We're going to cover that. It's going to look right. So to finish, go ahead and put your chocolate bag back into your mug until you're ready to do the cleaning process, and that'll keep it, I don't know, from dripping all over your countertop. So from this point, you do want to set this into the refrigerator to let your chocolate chill, and then that way you can put your rosettes on the top and you won't worry about smudging your chocolate or making a huge mess. So let's go ahead and put that in the refrigerator. So we're back with our cake. It doesn't take very long for the chocolate to set up in the refrigerator. You could even leave it outside on the counter and it will definitely set up for you. But if you do want to push things along, stick it in your refrigerator. It'll take a minute or two. So in the meantime, now that this is nice and cool, we're gonna go ahead and fill our bag. We're gonna finish the top edge, hit it with some sprinkles, and we're done. So let's grab our bag and show you another way to put the tip in it. So this tip we're selling online at Neighborhood Provisions website as our cake decorating toolkit. So a lot of the things you see here you'll also be able to get on Neighborhood Provisions website. So you will not be left out of all of the cool things we have going on. But go ahead and stick your tip in the bag before you trim it. Push it all the way down, but then just move it back a little bit, and then that way you know how much you need to trim from the edge of your bag. And then just push your tip through. Roll the bag down and hold it like an ice cream cone. All right. We want to fill the bag with the remainder of our icing. Get that guy out of the way. All because I've made this mistake like 1,000,000 times in my career, and for whatever reason I haven't learned. If you're ever doing something here and your cake is very close to you, you might want to consider just sliding it out of the way so you don't accidentally stick your elbow in the cake or run the spatula through the cake. I think this is a lesson that is just going to go to the grave with me because I can't ever seem to learn this one. So pro tip, but I still can't figure that one out. All right, so we're going to burp our bag. And I don't see or feel any more air pockets. And again, so now that we have a lot more decoration on here, we do want to try to find, one, the back of our cake, which, shoot, I can't find. Oh, that's a good thing. All right. Well, I can't find it. So, if you can't find the back of your cake, which is a great problem to have because it means you did an awesome job smoothing on the side, you want to find the next part of the decoration that might not look as awesome because then you can make that the back of your cake and no one sees that part. It's a secret. So I'm not loving this part because the chocolate drips all the way down to the board, and I'd much rather have it drip like right before the sprinkles or end the drip right before the sprinkles. So I'm going to make this my back. And what we're going to do is just make little circles, continuous circles. And at some point you will need to stop, and I'll show you how to stop so that you can have this consistent flow. All right, so here we go. Start squeezing even pressure. You're just gonna make little loops. All right, so it got to the point where the pressure on the bag was just too much for my hand. So you do need to twist your bag so that the bag is nice and taut and move your hand down. And whenever you do finish, you want to make sure that that tail is on the bottom of the cake and not on the top of the buttercream loop, so that when you go to pick up your next half of circles, you can keep that nice and clean and no one will even see that you had to stop right there. All right, so continue your loops. When you get to the end, just finish on the back by pulling your tip through, and that's that. So we finished our top edge with all of our buttercream, and the final stage is just hitting it with more sprinkles, because let's be real, a cake can't have too many sprinkles. It's not a thing. I hate to break it to you, but it's not. So we're just gonna load this up. I'm sorry, but this mix really thrills me. All right, so that's it. I'm gonna hit the center with a few sprinkles just to clean it off. Hit the sides, some sprinkles. All right, and that's it. So this is our cake, and this is the competition. So all of you home bakers, this is what you get to make at home. So go ahead to Neighborhood Provisions website, order your kit online, and make sure that whenever you are done with your cake that you tag @BuzzBakeShop and Neighborhood Provisions on Instagram so we can see your final project. And the best person or the closest cake that we see to this one will win a gift card to Neighborhood Provisions. All of the details for ordering your kit and the details for the rules for the competition will be linked in the description below. Happy baking! Enjoy!